Hi everyone, how's it going? I'm doing okay. We just got back from a family trip to Berlin, place I've wanted to go to for years. Finally got myself out there, and of course found a bunch of great record shops while I was there. It's a great city, well worth a visit. Bloody cold though, even at the start of April, it was absolutely freezing. Um, but I spent a lot of time in record shops, so kept myself out of the chill. I visited about 6 record shops, bought something in each of them, and I figured that as I was in Germany, the sensible thing to do was to buy stuff I couldn't get over here, or krautrock stuff, Eastern European rock, that kind of thing. I did a pretty good job of that. Didn't pick up some of the stuff I thought I might see a lot of. I thought I might be able to finish off my SBB collection, but I only saw one album by them and I already had it, so no joy there. But I did pick up some really good stuff, and there are great record shops in Berlin. I thoroughly recommend a visit. Um, I started off in a place called Lefter Records, which, as it turned out, was my favourite shop of the lot, and I tried to go back the day before we left, but it was already closed because there's a whole bunch of stuff I'd passed over first time, thinking I'll see these down the line. The other shops will have these. Of course, they didn't. But you know, you live and learn. So the first thing I bought was an album by Ela Craig, who kind of get lumped in with krautrock, even though they are Austrian. And I wasn't really familiar with them before. I think I'd probably sampled little bits of them online. Generally speaking, they're kind of symphonic prog rock. Like I say, they get lumped in with krautrock, but there's none of those sort of motoric beats or any of that kind of relentless groove to this, that's for sure. And this album, Hats of Glass, actually starts off with a cover, which is a really weird way to start an album, I always think, particularly when it's a cover of a Christa Burr song. Fortunately, it's not The Lady in Red, it's A Spaceman Came Travelling, which is one of his better tunes, but it just seems a bit pointless. I mean, why start with a cover and why start with a Christa Burr song? It's okay, you know, they do an okay job of it, but the album doesn't really get going until the second track. And even then, the whole thing's a little bit vague. I do enjoy this. It's kind of lightweight. There's loads of wispy synths on it. The vocals are all in English, but they're kind of not especially forceful. The whole thing sounds a bit sort of meandering and sleepy. And yeah, I think I'm going to have to listen to this one a few more times to really get a handle on it. What I should say, none of the things today that I show I'm going to review as such, because I've only listened to these once or twice at most, and I don't think it'd be fair to judge them yet. But I'll just give you some of my initial impressions. So it's not a bad album. B-side starts a little more promisingly. There's some kind of punchier synth sounds on there, and some nice punchy drums. But yeah, I'm withholding judgment on this one for the moment. But yeah, I think their first 2 albums are supposed to be their best, which I've not heard, so I'll have to check those out. But decent, but yet to really convince me. Then I actually bought a second Ela Craig album in Lefter Records, and this one's a lot better. This came out in 1978, as did the other one I just showed you. So 2 albums in 1 year, pretty good going. This is a much better album. This is kind of a concept album based on a Catholic Mass. So if you're familiar with the Electric Prunes Mass in F minor, you know the kind of thing you let yourself in for. And it works really well. It's a nice flowing concept. There's no stupid covers on this one. There's some great guitar on here. Loads of spacey sort of synths, of course. It's a very synth-reliant album. Seems to be a very synth-heavy band. There's the odd sort of funky element, which is quite welcome. And the vocals aren't all in English, but they're not Austrian, they're not German either. They're I guess in the kind of languages that Catholic masses are in. So I think you've got some kind of Latin on here, perhaps, and I don't know. I'd have to look it up. Perhaps some Greek or something like that. But it does seem to be in multiple languages. I paid €10 for this. Money well spent. The first one I showed you was €8. and I love the image of the band. I mean, look at them. They look like a bunch of out-of-work university lecturers wearing Angels' old stage outfits, and that's always a good look. And this comes on the Philips label. There you go. And a really nice plain copy. Never see Ela Craig albums in the UK. And when they're online, they seem to be expensive. So to find two of them for €10 and under was a bit of a find, I think. And next up, same shop. I picked up an album I'd never seen before, and I wasn't getting particularly good reception on my phone in the shop I was in, so I couldn't really do a quick search to see what this one was like, to read reviews or hear any little snippets online. So I took a chance on it, and it's Snowball. The album's called Defroster. The band is Snowball, and the thing that made me pick this one up is that the singer and guitarist is this guy Roy Albrighton, who's better known as being the singer-guitarist in Nectar. So I was expecting this to be more in that kind of Nectar vein, of that kind of slightly psych-tinged deep prog, and it's not. This is very much a jazz rock fusion album, and it's also a very slick, polished jazz rock fusion album. Like I say, I've only played this once, and to be honest, after playing it, I read some reviews and was surprised to hear people commenting on the vocals, because I didn't remember having heard any vocals on it, so I obviously wasn't paying attention. But it's really well played. I mean, it's superb musicianship throughout. It's pretty commercial. Like I say, it's very polished. It's a bit safe. But I shall give it another go. The next up is an album that I picked up based pretty much on the sleeve and the picture of the band on the back and the instruments they played. Like I say, I couldn't get much of a signal, so I couldn't look this one up, but it looked interesting. I'd never seen it before, never seen a copy of this in the UK, never heard of the band before, and kind of takes me back to the old days of record collecting, when I'd go to a second-hand record shop pre-internet, and I'd just have to take a punt on things based on a gut feeling. And I think this has paid off. This is an album by Skyrider. Came out in 1980. They're a German band, I believe. And they grew out the ashes of Pell Mell, who were another krautrock band, who I think were more in the kind of a synthy prog end of krautrock. And that's kind of where these guys start off. This is very commercial prog, leaning towards hard rock. There's the usual guitar and organ and piano on here, but there's also violin, which gives it a slight vibe of Kansas in their sort of, I guess Kansas is more commercial era in the early 80s. And that's fine with me. I love that era of Kansas. I love all of Kansas's records. And this one is definitely a keeper. Really enjoyed this. Bands that look like that normally don't disappoint in my experience. So Skyrider, like I say, never seen it before. It's on a label I've never heard of before, called PM Records. And there's a label for you. I believe they did a second album, which I've not heard, but I'll be interested to hear that, because this has been a really good listen. Like I say, if you're into kind of commercial prog and you like a bit of Kansas, that kind of thing, you could do a lot worse. And the final record I bought in Lefter Records was a compilation album. I seem to have been buying a few compilations recently. This one is particularly interesting because it's on the Amiga label, which was a big label in Eastern Europe during the Cold War, and it features bands from East Germany and other states in Eastern Europe. And the compilation is called Hallow Number 1, and there were a series of these apparently, I think going up to sort of 7, 8, something like that. This compilation came out in 1972, and I didn't realise when I bought it, of course, that it was supposed to come, or originally came, with an insert which had details of all the artists and tracks on, because that information isn't on the back sleeve. You just have to look at the label or look it up online to find out. But There are a couple of artists on here I recognise. Pudus is one of them, East German band, and I own one of their albums, which is kind of a hit and miss affair. There's one really, really good track on it, which I think is called Icarus 2, which I absolutely love. Some of it can be a little bit cheesy, has a sort of a spot of the sort of beer keller to it. But the track that they have on this album, or the tracks, there might be 2 Pudus tracks on this actually, are really good. There's also a track by a band that are more commonly known as, and I'm going to struggle with pronunciation here, I'll get there, Kazoni Gitari. Now, they're a Polish band, and that's their Polish name, but they appear on this album as Root Gitaren. For some reason, they've got a more Germanic sounding name on this compilation. But this is well worth the €5 I paid for it. It's some really good stuff on this. I'm looking forward to going back and listening to it again. It's kind of a mixture of beat and psych, a bit of prog, and some nice 60s pop. So yeah, really recommend this, and looking forward to picking up some more of those comps, I think. Now, the next shop I visited was called Sound Vinyl, and I went in there with my wife, and she kind of not unreasonably wanted to know whether I was going to spend hours in there or take 5 minutes. If it was only be 5 minutes, she would have waited for me and we'd gone off and done something else. So I did what I usually do, have a quick look at the layout of the shop and what kind of things are in the bins. And I had to break it to, I'm not going to be rushing out of here. So she disappeared, entertained herself, and I had a good old dig. This place, again, Sound Vinyl's called. Fantastic bargain bins, which is where I started, because right at the front of the bargain bins was this album, Electric Food, and they only wanted €3 for this. Couldn't believe it. I've seen this before online. I've never seen a copy in the flesh, so to speak. Snapped it up straight away. Came out in 1970. It's one of those exploito kind of heavy psych albums on this budget Europa label. And what's most interesting about this album is that the band who plays under the name Electric Food is actually what would become Lucifer's Friend. And some of the music is very reminiscent of Lucifer's Friend. It's hard rock, it's heavy psych. It starts with a fairly pointless cover, another pointless cover to start an album. A cover of Whole Lot of Love. And it adds nothing to the original. It's not anywhere near as good as the original. And, it's completely disposable. But after that, this is a great album. It's just loud, heavy, full of fuzz guitar. Really, really excellent stuff. I love the artwork. I think that's a nice little sleeve art there on the back. There's the Europa label for you. So yeah, €3 in the bargain bin. Couldn't go wrong with that, and I certainly wasn't leaving that behind. And the bargain bin kept on yielding these little treasures for me. Next one I got was this album, Barry Ryan Sings Paul Ryan. And this came out in 1968. Barry Ryan's an English guy, and he sings all his brother's songs. I think his brother wasn't interested in being a performer, purely wanted to be a songwriter, or perhaps suffered from stage fright or something. So Barry Ryan did his songs. And this is a fantastic bit of Baroque pop. Heavily orchestrated, very progressive, symphonic pop music. Absolutely fantastic stuff. This is one for fans of the Left Bank or early Bee Gees. And even I've seen mentioned online, someone compared certainly the opening track, which is called Theme to Utopia. They compared it to the Electric Light Orchestra around the time of Out of the Blue, and I can totally hear that. And I paid €3 for that. Absolutely delighted with it. It's a really interesting album. Only played it once, but that's going to get a lot of play. I think it's just going to yield more fruit every time I listen to it. Then next up, I found an album for €1, which I've been looking for. It's Hilly Michaels' Calling All Girls. And this is exactly what it kind of looks like. It's quirky, new wave, power pop type stuff. There's elements of sort of cheesy 70s glam pop in here. So you've got touches of the Bay City Rollers and Roy Wood's Wizard. And there's quite a bit of a Sparks influence as well, which I've been really enjoying. So I'd listened to some of this previously, and it was on my want list, so I was very happy to pick up a copy of this, particularly for €1, because I've not been able to find a copy on my sort of trips out to the record shops in the UK. So that's definitely once recommended to power pop fans. Then I found another power pop album, and that is Chris Stamey's It's Alright. And Chris Stamey was a member of the DBs, who were another sort of post-punk power pop band. This came out in 1987, and it's full on sort of jangle pop with 80s production. It lacks the lush harmonies I really generally look for in power pop. Having said that, it's a really good listen. And surprisingly, actually, the harmonies aren't more lush, because he's got Alex Chilton from Big Star and Marshall Crenshaw on backing vocals on this, so you'd expect them to make a big feature of that, but not so much. The songs are all really solid. I'm fully expecting this one to be a grower, and again, €1 for that, so I was very, very pleased with that. Then another bargain bin item was this one by a band called Kushwa, who are a bunch of Americans, and their second album, Nasty Hardware. Not quite sure why I bought this, because I got their first album. I think it's really lame. It's very middle of the road, AOR, bordering on yacht rock. I'd always heard this was supposed to be a far superior album. So for €3, I thought, I'll pick it up. I can always offload it if it's no good. And actually, it's not bad. Came out in 1980. Like I say, it's an improvement on the first album. A lot of it's fairly formulaic, and about halfway through I was thinking, yeah, this is just going in the to sell pile, but it just kept improving, and there's enough on it to make me want to listen to it again. In the final track, Visibility Zero, is a nice quirky bit of AOR, so yeah, I shall definitely give this one another listen and get back to you on that. Then the final one I bought from Sound Vinyl was an album by a band that I've been trying to get anything by them. All I have is a compilation album, and again, incredibly difficult to pick these albums up in the UK, in my experience at least. And it's Satin Whale and their As a Keepsake album. And this was a band out of Cologne in Germany. This album came out in 1977. It's their third LP, and everything I read says that their first two LPs are fantastic, and then they went into a steep decline. I haven't heard those first two LPs, but I really, really like this one. It's commercial prog. There's flute on here, there's synthesizers, vibraphone, tubular bells, so chuck everything at it. It reminds me quite a lot of Eloy and the kind of albums they're putting out in the late 70s, early 80s. There's a little bit of Camel in here as well. I think one of the reasons why it gets a lot of stick online is because there's female backing vocalists on here. So it's almost like gospel type backing vocals, which really seems to rub some people up the wrong way, not the right way. And I don't get that. Where would Pink Floyd have been without the Great Gig in the Sky? You know, for me, it really works. I think this is a really interesting album. I'd love to hear the first two albums. I'd love to get the first two albums because I'm sure they're going to be great as well. You know, this is a really good listen. It is commercial prog. It has popular elements like the track No Time to Lose. I guess the highlight for me is probably the track Shady Way. I don't know. I've listened to it a couple of times, and that's one that stuck out for me. So that might be worth checking out online if you're interested. But yeah, Satin Whale, As a Keepsake album. And again, it's all sung in English. I know that foreign language albums can put some people off. Generally not an issue with me. I quite like hearing people sing in their native tongue. But great album. Really enjoying that one. Okay, next up I went to a shop called Vinyl from Berlin, and you'll notice some of these record shops, they have very kind of does what it says on the tin type store names. So Vinyl from Berlin, I picked up just the one album, but it's one that I've been wanting to pick up, particularly after I showed one of this band's later albums in a previous video, and a couple of people left comments saying check out their second and third albums, because that's really where they did their best work. So I picked up Beggars Opera's Pathfinder album. This is their third LP. Yet to hear their second album. The first album, I've always found it a bit too classical and not enough rock. And I like my prog to be prog rock, not just classical music played on rock instruments. This is more commercial, symphonic prog, I suppose, bordering on heavy rock at times. But yeah, definitely incorporating heavy rock. Band was out of Scotland. I think they just got better with time until the fourth album, where they kind of deteriorated a bit. Although, I'm not totally against that fourth album. This has great production. It's very accessible prog. And yeah, this is a band that really divides opinion. There doesn't seem to be any consensus about which is their best album. Some people think this is diabolical. I think it's the best thing I've heard by them. I absolutely love it. There's some mellotron on here, obviously plenty of guitar, quality vocals, tons of Hammond organ. I guess you could make comparisons to Uriah Heep. Yeah, I've really, really enjoyed this. I think it originally came out on the Vertigo Swirl label, and this one must be a second pressing, or perhaps the German pressings all came on the Spaceship label. I don't know, but that's certainly what mine is on. And originally, this would have come in a fold-out poster sleeve. Mine doesn't, but what it does have is an enormous poster contained in the sleeve, which I'll attempt to show. Yeah, it's just the album sleeve. The album artwork blown up to an enormous scale. So yeah, I'm really glad to have got this. It's an absolutely minty copy as well. Looks like it's never been played. And I paid €22 for this. So I wouldn't be able to get a copy back home for that. Certainly wouldn't if I could find a copy. It wouldn't be in that kind of condition either. So yeah, very happy with that. Okay, next up I went to a shop called Logo Records, and just picked up the two albums there. First one, mentioned this band earlier, Pudus, and this was their first album, came out originally in 1974. This is, I think, judging by the sleeve notes, a 1980 reissue. And these guys were from East Germany, I think East Berlin in fact. And originally the album had this artwork on the sleeve. But I think all the Pudus reissues that put out in 1980, they did this kind of a sleeve with a different number for for whichever album it was. They did have a copy of the album, the original sleeve, in the record shop where I got this. The same price, €5, but it was trashed. And I thought, I can either get a copy that's going to play with loads of sort of snap, crackle and pop, or I can get a really good repress. So I plumped for the repress. I'm not proud. Quite happy to have that. So this is hard rock / prog rock with keys. Some great guitar. It can be cheesy at times, but for the most part it's solid and it's heavy and reminds me of sort of Deep Purple and ELP and those sort of bands. So yeah, pleased to have that. Probably that will do me for Pudus now, because I think this is supposed to be their best album, and I think they got a little bit patchier as they went on, so that'll do me. And then in Logo Records I also bought Typhong's third album. Spent €8 on that. This came out in 79. Excuse me, this came out in 1979. It's their third LP. And I've got the first two LPs, which are really nice symphonic prog with definite elements of Pink Floyd and Barclay James Harvest and those sort of bands on there. This one is more commercial, as you might expect from a prog album released in 1979, and as such it gets pretty much universally panned. But again, I've been enjoying it. It's definitely got poppier elements, but it's not a pop album, it's just a commercial prog album. I guess perhaps you might expect them to go more poppy, because one of the guys in the band, his name Jean-Jacques Goldman, went on to be more of a songwriter than the performer, and he wrote a lot of hits for people like Celine Dion. So perhaps pop was where his heart was really at, or perhaps it's where the money was. But this is really good symphonic prog, goes pop, has English lyrics, even though they're a French band with a couple of Vietnamese guys in the band. But yeah, I've enjoyed my listen to this, and I'll give it another spin soon. Then on another day, we headed north of the centre. We were staying in the centre of Berlin. Those shops, I think, were all south of the centre. And then we sort of headed north, stumbled on a shop called Old School Records, and picked up just the one album in there, because most of the shop was just filled with brand new releases. Can get those anywhere, not interested. But they had a few bargain bins underneath the racks. I dug my way through there, and this was the only thing I came up with. I was very pleased to get this. It's the debut album by the Rembrandts. Came out in 1990. And I guess people know this band because they did the theme tune to Friends. And it's probably the reason why most people completely dismiss this band now. I must admit, I heard the theme tune for Friends on the radio before I ever saw the programme. And I thought it was a decent bit of catchy power pop. Still do. It's been overplayed. It's hard to hear it without thinking of the sitcom. Is it a sitcom? Whatever it was. It's just tied in too closely to that now. But you shouldn't dismiss the band's entire back catalogue on the strength of one commercial song. This is commercial. It's slick, pop rock, power pop. Reminds me a lot of Crowded House, and there's obviously a fair amount of Beatles love going on. The vocal harmonies are very kind of Everly Brothers style. There's a nice organ bubbling away on here, and I really enjoy this band. This isn't their best album. Actually, their best album for me is the one with the theme from Friends on it, which was tagged on the end of the album after it became a hit, I think. As a bit of an afterthought. And if you ignore that and just listen to the rest of the album, it's a really decent power pop album. So there's the two main guys in the band. So they're the ones harmonising, Everly Brothers style. Do a really nice job of it. I suppose it sounds a bit as well like it sounds a bit like the Paul Carrack era of Squeeze as well. There's not as much energy in this album on later albums, although it picks up again towards the end, and there's some interesting sounds on there. Particularly, there's a track, Everyday People, which has some nice sort of sound effects on it, and Confidential Information is another good one. So, very pleased to pick that up. €5 for a 1990 pressing of a Rembrandts album in mint condition. Definitely not complaining. Then the final shop I went to was a place called The Record Store. See what I mean about not thinking too hard about the names of these shops. And this was one I'd had on my to-do list. I'd looked it up prior to flying out to Germany, and then kind of promptly forgot about it and pretty much stumbled on it one day. And I'm so glad I did. Unfortunately, it was the day we were leaving, and I had to cut short my visit to leg it back to the hotel to get my case and get to the airport. But I managed to pick up 3 albums while I was in there. I think I could have happily spent another hour digging through and probably would come away with a lot of other stuff. But as it was, I picked up this album by Harless, It's called Night Meets the Day. Paid €12 for this, which I was more than happy with. I love that sleeve art. It's kind of, yeah, almost like a flying pirate ship. And I think this is actually supposed to be a concept album about pirates, which threw me a little bit at first because some of the vocals have this kind of gruff, I don't know, slightly gravelly, well, very gravelly vocals. And so I don't quite fit in with the sort of prog sound this band's going for. But I'm wondering if the guy was channeling his inner pirate when he was singing. I don't know. Anyway, this came out in 1977 on the Sky label. Which looks like that. And they were a German band. They sing in English. The vocals, like I say, are a bit sort of gravelly and pirate-like and can be a little bit annoying at times. But having kind of considered perhaps that he's trying to voice a pirate as he's singing, I might have to give it another listen and bear that in mind. The band features ex-members of Jane, another crack rock band, and the Scorpions' first drummer, a guy called Werner Lohr. So, these guys should know what they're doing. And musically, it's great. It's really good, progressive hard rock. Very happy to have it in my collection. And like I say, I'm going to give it another listen. And I'm sure I'll get something out of it because I didn't dislike it. It's just the vocals were a bit of a shock to me. But yeah, so that was a decent find. Then in the bargain bins, I found this one, the Flim Souls debut album. Nice bit of power pop. And I paid €5 for this. Very, very happy to have got this for that price, or for any price. I couldn't find it at home. So this was their debut, came out in 1981. And it features Peter Case on vocals and guitar, who was previously in The Nerves. It's very Stonesy sounding power pop. Definitely the sort of tougher post-punk branch of power pop. Really good songs, very catchy stuff. Yeah, I'm looking forward to giving this one another listen. I mean, it's generally acclaimed as a bit of a power pop classic, so I'm definitely looking forward to spending some time with this one. So the last thing I picked up in the record store, lucky I got it really, because I was in a rush, had to pick up a tram from outside the store to go back to the hotel, get my case and get to the airport. Had 5 minutes and I just noticed as I was going to pay for the other couple of albums, there's a whole psychedelic section I hadn't even seen. So I had a very quick flick through there, probably left some absolute gems behind, but I did see and get one album that I've been after for a long time. And it's Passing Stranger by Paul Corder on the MAM label. This is a German pressing. And this is a 1971 album. It's a really good piece of singer-songwriter stuff, I suppose you'd call it. It does get variously described as prog or psych. I don't think it's either of those things, although there's one track on here, what was it? Rubble My Cauldron, which gets fairly acidic. And I've had this on CD for a number of years, and I've been wanting to pick up a copy on vinyl. It's one of those records I think just sounds better on vinyl. It's kind of where it belongs. And Paul Corder, he was born in Singapore, but he's an English guy. And he previously had been a member of Dada, the band that featured Robert Palmer and Elkie Brooks. And he was also, as you might imagine from the look of him there, he was a cast member of the stage musical Hair. So, he's got some pedigree there. And I think on this album he's backed by Chris Spedding and various members of the band Forevermore even. And it's a really interesting album. It's got some grit. It's singer-songwriter stuff with grit. It's not, you know, bedwetters music, that's for sure. So very pleased to have this. I paid €20 for it, and like I say, I very nearly missed out on it, but really good album. There you go. Leave your comments below. Be interested to know your opinions on anything I've shown, and I'll be back again soon.